Okay, guys. I just wanted to kind of give you a little tutorial, some tips and pointers on how to do this assignment. Just for reference, what we have you doing here is just analyzing some genetic data, um, similar to actually what I do in my research. I research the FTO gene, and I'm using data that is you actually the data we're giving you is from the data set that I use. And I have been performing similar statistical analyses that I'm getting ready to show you here to find associations related to the FTO gene. And so this is just an opportunity for you guys to kind of get your feet wet a little bit. It's probably different than anything most of you have done. And just give you a chance to kind of play around and see what can be done in the genomics world. Okay, so first of all, I just want to point out there's two different groups. We have the grad student group, and we have the undergrads. So at the end of this, there is a part of this assignment that is only for the graduate students. So if you're an undergrad, you don't even need to listen to that part, and I'll let you know when we get there. But everything else is pretty much the same. So what we're going to give you is you're going to have this worksheet, and you'll fill it out. And also we will give you a little bit of a data set. It's just a little piece of what we use, and you're going to use it to answer all these questions. Oh, that's not the one you need. Okay, so starting here, the first thing is to find genotype counts. So we're dealing with the alleles A and G for this particular SNP that you've been assigned. I will be using an example from my FTO gene, but it also is AG, so that's kind of convenient. And so this is something you can do in your Excel spreadsheet. I have genotype frequencies here. And so I kind of just label them for my own purposes so I can kind of do counts. And so you'll see here that I've already put in a function. It's called the COUNTIF. I did COUNTIF because I'm only counting one column. When we do other parts, we'll do a COUNTIFs with the S, so you can do more than one column combined. And so what I did is I'm doing this SNP column. And so my SNP is RS1121980. And I wanted to find out how many of the people in this column have the AA genotype. And so that COUNTIFs function equal COUNTIF, and then parentheses. I literally, in fact, I'll do it with AG. So I've got equal COUNTIF parentheses, and then I will click on this top cell, and then the range goes all the way down. Once you know how many there are, you don't have to necessarily scroll, but you can if you want. So we go all the way down to H622 in this case, and then I'll do a comma, and I'm going to designate, oh, I picked up. I'm going to designate that I'm looking for a G here. So I'll put an A and a G, put that in quotes, and then that should give me a count of how many of these participants have that AG genotype. So you can calculate your genotype frequencies pretty quickly that way. So the next thing you'll do is a minor allele frequency. It's slightly different. You're going to count each and every A, every G, and then you're going to report that as a percentage. I'm not going to actually show you how to do that here because I did link a video that is, and it's just really not that hard. And then I did ask, report that as a percentage. Okay, so I wanted to look at this table. I give you lots of instructions here of how I want you to set it up, just so that you can keep everything straight, because the reality of this assignment is that if you get off on your counts here, everything else that follows is going to be off. So I want to make sure that you can do this correctly. And so I started a table here. Again, I'm not using the SNP that you guys are, so none of these counts are the same as what you will get, but I describe how to set this up in words. This is kind of the visual of what that looks like. I've already done my counts for eats nuts regularly. Now, what you're going to do here is you're going to be doing count ifs, because you're going to combine several here. So you're going to be combining your genotype, and you're going to be combining your dietary questions. So for eats nuts regularly, I use the count ifs. I go ahead and grab my SNP. Okay, so that's the H3 to H6, 622. I'm doing the AA genotype. And then the second part of this is because it's eats nuts regularly, and I also am looking for those who answered yes. I did give you instructions that the yes answers are 1. Or yeah, I changed those all to 1. Okay. They're all 1. So I'm looking for eats nuts regularly, which is D3 through D622. And then I'm looking for the ones that are the number 1. And that gave me my AA count. So you're going to do that over and over and over again. So like you literally, once you put it in for that one, I just copy paste and I adjust. So like for the nose, I change this to a 0. And then here I'm switching genotype. So I change from AA to AG. And then make sure that you're doing the ones for yeses. And then when you do this, you will switch that to a 0. So you can kind of copy and paste as you go. Just be really careful that you're pulling from the correct column. And then what I did to do this AA plus AG, for me, it was easiest just to sum the AA and AG. So I did a sum function there to add these two. And you'll use that later. I think I asked you just to do one or the other. I don't remember which one in the assignment, but I did both here because I work with both personally. And then the percentage part, we did this assignment before and people got confused here. I need you to find the percentages like of the AA people who answered this a question. So what you've got to do is so you can see my function here. So what I did is I did L3, which is this one. So 31 people of AA said yes. And I divided that by adding the no and the yes together. Okay. We're not adding across this way for these percentages. This is the percentage just of these two. So what percentage of people who have AA said yes to eating nuts regularly? So make sure you do these right because your percentages will be wrong if you don't do it this way. And then just as an easy check, you can see that if you added these two together, your yes and your no should add up to 100% for each of these. And if they do, then you've done it right. I did add on to do a sum. So this was really adding all 6 of these together. Okay. And that just gives you a total that is a total number of participants. So that would be like, for this, it's how many people I have genotype for. And I just want to point out, like, if you were to scroll down here and say, okay, we have 620, we go to 622. Well, don't tell me there's 622 because as you see, when you scroll through, some of them were no calls. That was just not a good read there. And so those numbers, like from my column to your column that you're going to work with, won't even be the same. And from each question to the next, it could be slightly different if there's any missing data. So I want you to have that because that's going to be a good point for you to use that number to kind of track to make sure that like some of your other calculations are being done right. And I'll show you how you would be able to determine that. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to create your table. You're going to take a screenshot and put it here because I'm going to be grading whether you have all your numbers right. And also that'll tell me like if you don't have those right, then I'll know that none of the rest are going to be right. And so I'll have to adjust. But the goal is let's get all those first counts correct. Okay, the next thing you're going to do with your counts is we're going to do chi-square calculations. These are ways to search out if there's any associations. Do we have any differences between our groups? And so I have a description here of what you're going to be doing. So I tell you how to set up your chi-square. So make sure you set it up like this, where you have yes listed first, then no, and then you have AA and AG plus GG listed second. It'll just make everything go more smoothly if you do it exactly the same way that I suggest. So I went ahead and just from this chart transported those numbers over. You don't have to, but this is just for my own purposes. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and go to that chi-square. You can click the link and I already have it pulled up. So, all right. So there's information about chi-square. We're doing a 2x2. So group 1, I said to do yes. Group 2, no. Category 1 was AA, or in my case, I'm doing GG. But for you guys, follow the example on your paper. And then I'm doing AA plus AG for my second category. Again, you guys follow the instructions on yours. Click next. Okay, now you're going to come in and you're going to actually fill in your counts. So make sure you grab the right numbers for each spot. You get those from your count table that you already did. And I'm just trying to make this quick so that you guys aren't, so this doesn't go on forever and ever. So I already had this kind of pre-figured out. 238. Okay. So once you put in your numbers, you click next. Okay. So this is one spot where you can kind of double check to make sure you've put your numbers in properly. So first of all, the thing I'm looking at is this grand total. That is a total of those counts that I've done, which GG, AA plus AG would include everyone, right? Those are all the genotype options. I'm going to look back. 616 is how many I should have. That is one of the things that I wanted you to have that number for. And so that's a good sign that I've probably put my numbers in properly because I've got, you know, the right number there. Significance level, we're going to stick with 0.05. That's kind of the standard for p-value. People change that based on their own, you know, whatever analysis they're doing, but we're going to go with 0.05 and we're going to click on calculate. And we get a chi-square statistic, a p-value, and whether or not it's significant. So on the assignment, let me find it. Okay. I ask you to do all these things, and you're going to do this calculation for each of the 4 diet questions. So you have different counts for eats nuts regularly, eats vegetables, eats sweets. You'll do it for each one. And then I ask you to report it in the proper notation, which I give you an example right here. If you're confused, you can click on this page. It'll take you where it gives you an example. And then I even wrote one out for you here. Just make sure you do your degrees of freedom properly. And then you literally will pull this information from right here. And do this one. Don't do the Yates one. Do the chi-square statistic without Yates corrections. So for instance, let's see, we've got degrees of freedom and then we have sample size. Okay, sample size is 616. And then the chi-square statistic, okay? So notice you go ahead and give it 2 decimal places. And so I would do 9.12. And then comma, p equals, and then you have your p-value. Notice there's no 0 in front of that. So just for proper notation, you don't put a 0 in front of that decimal. And I'm not going to be strict about how you round it. Like for instance, if I did this, my p-value, if I rounded it up to 2 would be 0.00. Well, that's not informative to me, not the way that I want it to be. So I might put 0.002, or I might even write the whole thing. And then comma. So is it significant or not? Well, we set our significance level at 0.05. And if we're less than 0.05 p-value, then we are significant. Also, as you can see, it tells me that it's significant. So you don't even have to guess. You just write not significant or significant for each one of these. Okay, hopefully that's clear. Now, on to the next part. You're going to be calculating odds ratios for any significant chi-square results. So notice I said not for every single one of those. Not all of them will likely be significant. So you're going to look at them, and any of them that are significant, you're going to do an odds ratio for. And I just put a note. If you did not get at least one significant result, you made a mistake. So that's a sure sign that you're not on the right track there if you did not get any significant results. I have the website is medcalc.org, and it's going to give you this little box like this. Now, this is a little bit confusing because you have to know which value is A, which one's C, which one's B, which one's D. I gave you an example here if you were working like with this chart. And then I show you with your chart set up this way, A is that first value, and then C. So those two values go here, and then B and D. So it shouldn't, I mean, I put it all there for you. So even though it's a little bit confusing, you should be able to figure it out. So let's go take a look at the odds ratio. Okay. So I had, let's see, hopefully we do this right. I've got 61, and then I've got 154. Again, these are the numbers from the count table, so these are not new. 163, and also I did have a significant result. So, I mean, you can get an odds ratio for something that's not significant. I'm just not asking you to do that. Okay, let's see what we get. So, what I've got, oh, look, made a mistake. I'm like, that is not what I expected. I made a mistake. So let's do 238 is what should have been there. Okay. All right, this looks better. So first of all, when I did my chi-square, look, my p-value 0.0027, these probably are going to be really similar. So my p-value was 0.002. Okay. And then what you're going to give me, let's look at the worksheet real fast. I ask for very, okay. So you're going to give me these values, the odds ratio, the 95% confidence interval, which that just means that it's 95% of the odds are going to fall within that interval. And then the p-value from your odds ratio. So those values are all in here. You've got your odds ratio, confidence interval. I'm not asking for the Z statistic, and then your p-value. So that's pretty straightforward. Odds ratio is 0.5784. We're going to talk about what that means. So when I say record the calculation, you record those calculations, and I'm going to put 0.57, I think is what it was. No. That was odds ratio, my bad. Okay, so what does this tell you? Good question. So what this is telling you is that there's less odds of something happening here, okay? And let's say this one's about eating dairy, okay? So if these numbers pertain to your question about eating dairy, and you're saying these, yes, and these are the AA, and our odds ratio is 0.57. Well, this would tell me that people who have an AA genotype are 0.57 times as likely to eat dairy as those who are AG or GG, okay? So when I say the word as likely, I say that because it's less likely. If your odds ratio is less than 1, your odds are less likely than, the normal. 1 is kind of that middle point. If you're over 1, then you start talking in terms of more. So if we were 1.57, then this would tell me people who have the AA genotype are 1.57 times more likely to eat dairy compared to those who have AG or GG genotype. So it all depends on what that number is. If it's less than 1, you're talking about a group that's less likely to do that thing. And it all depends on how this chart is set up. Let's look at another setup, because what I do is I have you flip them, okay? So you're going to do it this way with AA listed first, followed by AG and GG, and then I have you flip it. And so let's say that you do this calculation and you get like 2.5, okay? So 2.5 tells us that the people who are in this group are more likely, okay? Because that odds ratio is higher than 1. They're more likely to eat dairy or whatever the question is than this group, the people who are AA. So there's different ways that you could say this. So what does this tell you? This tells us that people who have at least one G allele, that's one way you could say it, because people in this group have at least one G allele where they don't in this group. Or you could say people who have the AG or GG genotype are 2.5 times more likely to eat dairy compared to people who have the AA genotype. You can toss that around how you want. You can just make sure that you're doing your grouping properly. Don't tell me that people who have, you know, two G alleles are more likely to eat dairy than AA because technically these guys don't have two G alleles. That's not a proper way to state that. You have to include those who also only have one G allele. So just pay attention to what you're doing there. I know that's a little tricky, and I know you guys haven't really learned this. I give you kind of some examples on how to do that, and let me do one that's less than again, just for reference. So if you had an odds ratio less than 1, the proper way to state this would be people who have at least one G allele are 0.6 times as likely, so that word as likely to eat dairy compared to those with the AA genotype. That's one way to say it. You could say that, let's see, this would pertain to 60%, so they're 40% less likely. That one's a little more complicated. Yeah, I would stick with as or just less likely. But they're less likely if we're less than 1. So that's kind of the main thing. And then I want you to make sure you're doing your grouping right based on how your chart is set up. Okay. You could not say for instance, with this one, you couldn't say people who have the A allele are more likely compared to this group because there are people who have an A allele in this group too. So make sure you identify your groups properly. I feel like I've gone on and on and on, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Now, this question asks you to use the percentage data on your count table to generate a column chart for the dietary data. So we're going to look back at, let's see. We're going to look at this. I already made one. It's right here, but I'll show, whoop. Well, that was lovely. Gotta love it. Okay. Literally, again, this is why you need your percentages to be correct because, and I'm going to do a no one, but make sure you're pulling the information that I want you to. So what you would do is I'm highlighting the percentages that I want to go on my chart, and I'm going to do an insert. I'm sure some of you know how to do this better than I do. I'm just doing it at a very basic level. So here's a column chart that shows my no percentages. And go ahead and throw a title in there. I don't have the genotype because I didn't grab those titles. So make sure you label them because I'm going to need to know which genotype is in which bar. And so when I say I didn't grab those, if I had done it like this, like I did for this one, then those labels came in. So it's all in how you lay out your chart, whether you can do it that way. But anyway, this is what I'm looking for. And I did put a note. So if these percentages are done properly, these do not add up to 100%. If you added yes and no, those add up to 100. But across this way, they don't add up to 100. And that's going to be a sure sign to me that you probably didn't do it properly if you're adding up to 100. Okay. So that's how you're going to create your bar chart. I just want 3 bars. I was really clear about that. And then what statement or observation could you make regarding genotype and the dietary trait based on the bar graph? What I want you to do is look at it. What is it telling you? Does it agree with your odds ratio? Meaning if you found that people who have AA are more likely to eat nuts than others, does the bar chart reflect that? It should, but I want you to kind of draw these conclusions. Is there a trend? Do you see where like as you add a G allele that something's changing, meaning those who have 2 Gs would be more extreme than those who have 1 G compared to those who have no Gs? Like, what are you seeing in this bar chart? And then kind of a final statement as a researcher analyzing the statistical findings concerning this data, sum up your findings into one succinct statement. Sorry, I got tongue-tied. In your statement, include your findings as they relate to the genotype and diet choices, including what the odds ratio tells you. What can you conclude from the statistics? So we walked you through this for a reason. What did you learn? What is going on? What association exists? Is there a dietary trait that you can link to a certain genotype? And you're only going to do this with the significant findings. You know, we kind of abandoned anything that's not significant got left at this point. From there on, we're just dealing with those that are significant. All right, so keep that in mind. I don't want to hear about one that didn't have a significant finding here. We're talking about the one that was significant. Okay. So here's one last thing that I wanted to show you. I think I'm getting a little longer winded than I meant to, but I just want to make sure we're all clear. So based on these findings, there is some significant information regarding your SNP. And then so now we want you to use some online databases to go extract some information. You can use Google. Sometimes it's hard to find what you're looking for, but use these websites. I'm going to show you kind of what's in there. Now, I asked these questions. What is the most severe consequence of the variant? Where is this gene expressed? What does this gene do? Where did you collect the information? Don't be afraid to click around the websites and explore. Okay, so here's the information we're looking for that pertains to RS130788807. I'm going to actually look for information on the SNP I have because I'm certainly not going to give you the answers to your assignment. So let's see. I think I have all of them preloaded, and I'm going to go ahead and just highlight the SNP so I don't have to keep typing it in. Okay, so let's take a look at this website. This is one that links through. It'll bring you to a page like this. You can put your SNP in. I'm going to select human because that's what we're dealing with. And let's see what we get. It's probably going to go really slow because I'm recording. You know how that is. Okay, so what I'm saying, first of all, is the most severe consequence. I think I remember that being a question. Most severe consequence. Okay, cool. I'm going to kind of like side screen this. Okay. So most severe consequence, intron variant. Okay, so I would put intron variant and then I would literally just copy and paste the website for the source. Okay. Chromosome. Do we see where which chromosome this is in? Oh, chromosome 16. Okay, cool. So chromosome 16. Easy enough. If you get all your answers from the same website, great. That's fine. Let's see, what else? What gene? Okay, so I'm looking, it gives me alleles. So these are the alleles that could be associated with this SNP, by the way. Let's see. I don't know if, oh gosh, look at this. I didn't even point out. So we do ask, what are the phenotypes associated with the SNP? I see that I've got 25 phenotypes. Whew, that would be fun. I can tell you yours does not have 25, so you're welcome. But click on the phenotypes and, you know, look at what's there. So I would be writing body mass index, appendicular lean mass, circulating leptin levels. You can see some of them repeat, so it's really not even as many as it says, but those are phenotypes. So make sure you put all of the phenotypes down for your SNP. I'm going to go back and then genes. Okay, I do know I need to know the gene that this SNP is found in. So I'm going to click on genes and see what comes up. Okay. So I'm seeing down here where it says FTO. So I'm guessing this is probably in the FTO gene. If you're not sure, then use another source. Okay. So here's SNPpedia. If you come to this one, again, I have my SNP saved. I'm going to put it in there. Let's see what SNPpedia tells me. Oh, look. This is a SNP in the FTO gene. Perfect. Okay. So I can verify we are in the FTO gene. Again, chromosome 16. All of these different links here take you to a different resource that will give you information about that SNP, which that's a lot. Down here, it says that it's associated with body mass index. But as you saw, the other page gave us more phenotypes. So make sure that if you use this website, you go ahead and like cross-check and see. But something I wanted to point out for the grad students, part of your assignment will be to find a study that talks about this gene of some sort. And if you see here, I've got all of these. There's tons that are linked here, and I could pick one and use that. And so that's one way to find the study that that you want. Okay. Another website, because we're still missing, let's see, what else do we need to know? We need to know, so we figured out which gene, what protein does this gene code for? Okay, so it's in the FTO gene, but that doesn't automatically mean that it's an FTO protein. You have to go actually find that. And then where is the gene expressed? That's a little bit trickier. So I want, okay, if you go to the dbSNP, yep, that's one of the links that I give you. You can put in your SNP and let's see what that shows us. Okay. So here you have to select one. We want the Homo sapiens one, so we'll choose that. And you're going to realize that we're kind of getting some of the same information. So chromosome 16, it gives us some the alleles. Usually the way that that notation is, this means that G is more common over A. So A would be like the risk allele or the minor allele. Let's see. Gene consequence. So we called it the most severe consequence. It's an intron variant. You can find variant details. What we still don't know is what the protein is, right? So we still need to find that. You can click around. There are like publications. So again, grad students, if you're looking for publications, here's another way to find publications that are associated. And so what I want to do, let's see. So I want to go back, okay? Let's see. It's not taking me back as far as I want. Here we go. Okay, so see how this says SNP? You can go to gene and find the gene that is associated with this, and let's see what information we can find there, because I think that we can find some expression information here. Oh, and also the official full name. So there's your protein name, alpha ketoglutarate dependent dioxygenase. That would be your protein name or what you need to find for your assignment. And then let's see. So look here, it says ubiquitous expression in the brain, the adrenal, and then 25 other tissues. Okay, so I'm not necessarily looking for you to give me every single one. I want to know like where we mostly see. And so you can kind of get a feel for it just listed here. Remember, this is looking at the gene, not the SNP. But if you scroll down, which there's lots of cool stuff you can play around with here. We're not going to get into it because these are super complicated, but look at this. So this is the expression panel. So, but this one specifically says during human fetal development. So we want to look at really more like an adult version. And so what we see here, and it kind of agrees with what we read up there. So there's lots of expression in the brain. We have the adrenal here too. You could pick a few more. I can tell you yours is not quite like this. So if you find this spot for yours, it'll be a little more clear cut for you. But this is where you can find where that gene is expressed most. You can see it's kind of expressed all over the body. But anyway, let's go back to the assignment. And again, make sure you give me a link to whichever website you use. Again, if you're struggling, you can use Google, but I can tell you, you will find all the information you need to in these websites. You just have to start clicking around, looking at what's there, and find what is there. So then again, here's the phenotypes, list those. And then this last piece is for the grad students. So if you are an undergrad, you will not have this part, so you do not need to worry about it. But grad students, you need to find a publication, original research, okay? Don't grab a review. So if it says review, don't grab that one. And I want you to read it. And then you're going to give me kind of a summary, about a half a page. You summarize the main purpose and findings. Make sure to mention how the SNP is involved. And how could the odds ratio finding be related to what is in the literature about the SNP? So say you found that people who have this certain genotype are more likely to eat nuts, okay? And then you find a publication that talks about how that same SNP or that same allele or genotype is associated with obesity. Well, I could talk about how maybe the fact that they're eating more nuts or they're more likely to eat nuts could be contributing to being overweight. That would be a connection I could make based on what I found in this assignment. And so I want you to think about what you've done, think about how it relates to existing literature, and make sure you kind of tie that all together, or the phenotypes that are associated with it, which I had you find phenotypes. And then I just tell me what you learned. Like read that paper and tell me what you learned. Be sure to include a citation for the publication you choose. And I just want to point out, it is a short summary. I don't want pages and pages here. And so I don't expect you to get super deep with the technical research, but I do want you to read it and understand it so you can summarize it nicely for me and tie it all together. And make sure you focus on the overall point of the research and how it relates to our SNP and what you found here. That's the whole point, is to tie what you did here to what you found in the literature. Okay, I hope that this gives you guys kind of some clarity on how to do this assignment, and I hope you have fun with it. This is, like I said, I actually have performed this type of analysis on thousands and thousands of participants and looking for different angles, because every which way you line up these genotypes can give you different information. And I'm actually working on a paper that hopefully will get published this year. So it's really cool, and I hope that you enjoy it.